Hey, here we are, and we're about to do a bit of a guide on how to overclock the non-K CPUs. I'm pretty sure this board overclocks any non-K CPU, so the i3s, the i5s, and the i7s, non-K series CPUs. This is the board to get. There's a few others from Asrock that do it too, but I like this one because it was pretty much the same price as a H110 board, and yeah, it's super nice. How they go about doing this overclock? A lot of people say, oh, you can't overclock non-K CPUs and rah, but these guys have done it. I mean, they've added this here. This is the main reason, the Hyper BCL K engine, which is a little chip they've added to the board which lets you change the frequency of the base clock without actually putting any stress on the CPU. It does stress the CPU, but it doesn't stress the base clock of the actual CPU. With this Z170 boards and chips, the K series chips, I'm pretty sure this chip is built into the actual CPU. So yeah, and the non-K series chips don't have that. They just have a flat frequency, and that's it. That's all it will run at. Now there is other boards which can do it, right, but they don't have this BCLK chip, so they have just running on the stock BCLK chip, and where the problem is there is they cannot get very high overclocks. You might get maybe 2 to 5 base clock over your standard 100. So the base clock here, which is that's bus speed, which is your base clock, that is what it is standard, right? So with these other boards, they can only get maybe 5 over that, and that's it. With this base clock engine here, you can push it up to 20, 30, even 50 if your CPU is capable of handling it. So yeah, that's why these boards are good. There's a few things to note when doing it. You can't use your integrated graphics, so you have to use some sort of third party, whatever you call GPU. I've got a GTX 980 Ti. Any GPU will do, but you just cannot run the integrated graphics. It is disabled. As soon as you start overclocking, it's disabled. So at the moment it's running fully stock. Yeah, showing our temperatures. This is another thing here. Right, we've got our temperatures. Once you start overclocking, your core 0 and core 1, which is core 1 and core 2, that's just it's gonna be pinned. It's gonna be at 100, right? And that's normal. That's what happens. For some reason, when you start overclocking it can't register what temperatures it is anymore. I'm not sure why. It's not actually running at 100 degrees, but it will say it's running at 100 degrees. Although the package here still works, you'll still get a good proper package reading. So that is the only temperature reading you're going to get to go off. Yeah, and this is the 3 programs here that you're going to want to get. IDA64, which is this one here, which is our stress tester. It's got a stress test thing to test it to make sure it's stable. CPU Z, which is this here. Just got a really basic loadout of all the information, core voltages, multipliers and things, and hardware monitor, which is pretty much everything you could ever want. And yeah, so make sure you get these 3 softwares: CPU Z, hardware monitor, and IDA64 Extreme. So get those 3 first, and yeah, then we can start overclocking. I'm going to do a little bit of a compare between a Z170 motherboard and just this motherboard, because there's a few little things that are different between the K series overclocking and the non-K series overclocking. They're not exactly the same, and there's a few little drawbacks with the non-K series CPU overclocking, but I'll sort of go through that a bit later. Yeah, I think that's about it for now. I'll get into it. I'll go into the BIOS and I'll show you a few things. Alright, so the main differences between the 2 boards, Z170 is this XMP profile here. This will automatically set your RAM on a Z170 board. That you don't have that on the B150. Base clock, you've got this. This is all we've got, right, on the Asrock board is your base clock, which changes. Basically, it's core ratio times base clock, right? But on the locked CPUs, this here, the core ratio or multiplier, that's locked. You can't change this. On this board we can change it. We can go 44 or whatever we wanted to. We can change that to whatever we wanted up to the point where when you times that core multiplier by the base clock, and that's going to give you your frequency. See, I've got 147, so we've got a frequency of 4,700 megahertz. My RAM's running at 3,466, and that's just down here. You can choose whichever one you want it to run at. I've got some pretty high-end RAM in this, so but all this kind of stuff here you won't have either, right? So we don't have this. We don't have a core ratios. We don't have an XMP. All we've got is the base clock. So we won't have any of this other stuff. Some boards might, but in general we won't have a lot of this stuff, and honestly you don't really need it. What we do have is we have DRAM voltage and we have CPU voltage. We'll also have all these other ones here, but we don't really want to touch those. So basically the main difference is going to be we've got no core ratios and we haven't got XMP. That's going to be your main differences. All we've got is a base clock. So the base clock of an i3 is 37, I believe. So whatever we put our base clock to, it's going to be times by 37. So yeah, that was just a quick look at the differences between the 170. Okay, so we're about to go into the BIOS, so we want to go into our computer, we want to hit restart. Yeah, my camera's pretty budget, sorry, it's the best I can do. I've had some troubles trying to get the camera to work. This computer there, I've added a couple of fans and things. I want to hit delete as it starts up. There is an auto overclocking on it, but I wouldn't suggest doing it. Just hit delete until it boots into the BIOS. I don't know if I'm going to get the whole thing in there. Yeah, that's pretty much good enough. Okay, so here's your here's where you want to be. You want to be in the OC tweaker, and this is your base clock. This is all we can change, right? Yeah, this is all we've got. So we want to set that at, I would suggest starting at say 110. Right, so up here we've got 3700 megahertz, which is stock, and we're going to go 110, boom, 4.07. Okay, I know mine can handle at least 120, so I'm going to go 120, and then that's all we want to change here. Everything else you can just leave stock. This here you can turn off if you really want to, which just supports different frequencies, but just leave it enabled. It's not going to make much of a difference. And you want to go back. Basically this is going to be changing a clock. The base clock is 37, and then you times 37 by whatever this number is, and that gives you frequency. Now the RAM settings, you can't change the RAM on its own. Now that's one of the downfalls between the Z170 K series overclocking and the non-K. You cannot overclock the CPU and RAM individually. Basically the base clock is the RAM and the CPU overclocking all in one. So all you can do, like I've got a 3200 gigahertz set, right? So 3200 megahertz, 3400 megahertz. So my RAM can handle 2500 megahertz. But if your RAM can't handle it, you can click on here and you can go down to a setting which yours can handle. So say you've only got a 2133 megahertz kit, you can either run 2240 or 2079 to keep it within those frequencies, or slightly overclock in the case of the 22440. But mine's fine, so it's fine. Down here I would suggest probably leaving these stock, but you can change that to whatever settings are on your RAM. I'm just going to leave that stock because it should be fine. And yeah, all this can pretty much stay the same. So that's the main part here, is if your RAM does not handle, say, 2500 megahertz or whatever it ends up being once you set your base clock, you can change it here. And the DRAM frequency clock, you can change that from, it's standard, it's 133. You can set it at 100 megahertz, and then you've even got lower timings, or well, you've got less of them, but generally they're lower. So yeah, it's up to you deciding on what you want to do, and how fast you want to actually set your RAM at running. Me, I just sort of leave it stock, run it at the 2500 because I've got good RAM. Now the voltages. This is the scary part, right? You've got to decide what you want to set it at. Now, personally, I set mine as fixed. Some people don't recommend fixed. Some people say offset mode, but personally, I just run it fixed. I mean, I've never had trouble with overclocking before. I've run a whole heap of voltages, and I've never had any trouble. So, I mean, I've had this pushed up to 1.52 volts. I mean, that's a lot of voltage. You should not go anywhere near that, but I had this running for a few weeks at 1.52 volts, no trouble, perfectly fine. Okay, so fixed voltage, boom, set it to auto. Oh no, this is the voltage here, this is what we want to change. This is your CPU voltage, so I want to get rid of that. Now stock is, I think, around 1.2, but this is not going to be anywhere near stable at 1.2, so I'm going to go and chuck in 1.40 straight off the bat. So I know this can handle that. And now this load line calibration, it basically sets it so your CPU can do more voltage or something like that. It sort of explains it here, but basically you just want to leave it at 1, because 1's going to be the highest voltage, most stable overclock, but it's going to give you more temperatures. That's where you got to make sure that you've got a good cooler, so to be able to handle the temperatures. Now your DRAM voltage, set it to whatever your RAM is, find out what your RAM is, 1.2, 2.5, blah blah blah. Mine's rated for 1.3, which is recognised as what it's safe for, so 1.3 voltage, perfect. And that's pretty much it, that's all we need to do. Now, there's this comfort mode and things like this, which is like, it's kind of like I guess it's like an auto overclock in a sense. Honestly, I just leave it standard. You can go super mode and all sports, but what that changes, you're changing manually yourself anyway. So yeah, yeah, and that's pretty much all it is. Basically, you don't want to go much higher than 1.4. I'd say 1.4 is the highest you're going to want to go. You can go higher, you can go 1.42, 1.45, even up to 1.5. I mean, but you got to realise the higher you go, the hotter it's going to be, and the less lifespan. That's the more lifespan you're taking off it. So it might not last very long if you put too much in it. And yeah, I hope that sums it up. Basically, your base clock's here, so yeah, we're at 120. Okay, yeah, I think that's about all we need. That's everything. As long as you got your voltages right, and stuff like that, and then boom, hit F11, F10, save and exit, and let it boot. I do a little bit of a thing on what to do when it actually fails booting, which this should boot fine, there's no reason why it shouldn't. And we're away. This X boost overclock you'll see down there, I'd suggest not using that, just do it manually. It's uses less voltage, less heat, that produces a lot of heat. Yeah, sorry about the camera. Okay, so now we're into the OS. We've got our 3 programs that you've already installed. Now we want to bring up hardware monitor. Bring up all 3 of these. Alright, so we're back into the PC. We've got our overclock settings set. Now we just, it's time to stress test it. So we go up here, click Tools on IDA 64, System Stability Test. Now this is where you'll see your CPU temperatures, 100 and 100. That's capped out. It's for some reason it does that. Here we've got our cores, frequency, base clocks, everything, voltages, and you've got all the same settings over here. Frequencies and voltages up here. So basically what you want to do is, you want to start this, you want to run this for, I'd say 30 minutes to an hour. I mean, you can run it longer, but you know, that's generally pretty much as long as you want to do it, and you'll start to see your temperatures rise here. This blue color here, your CPU, that'll be your CPU package. That is what we want to make sure is not going to go too high. So we start it here, and you'll see it boost up to full load. Temperature starting to rise, and yeah, so I'd run that for, like I said, 30 minutes to an hour. I mean, 15 minutes, I usually run it 15-20 minutes myself, and if it's fine, it's fine. If it's not, it's not. But yeah, in theory it's fine. I'll do a little bit of a thing for what happens if it does fail, if you get a blue screen for some reason or anything like that. Yeah, I'll do that later on in the video, so if it does fail, just skip to that part of the video. It'll be near the end. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not really much more you can do from here. Just test it. If it's stable, cool. If it's not, go back and tweak the settings. But yeah, that's it. We're good to go. It's good to check what your RAM is running at. So mine's running at 2132. Well, actually no, it shouldn't be. Where are we running? Here we go, 1280. So you times that by 2, that's 2500. Since it's yeah, you double that, so it's running at 2500 and something. And that's it. Yeah, boom, it's perfect. Okay, so overclock has failed, right? For some reason it won't boot and your overclock's failed. Now, so what you want to do is you want to just turn your computer off, power it down, and then in here, I'm not going to be able to see it, am I? In there, you're not going to be able to see it properly, but there's a little battery in here, okay? Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it, but there's a little battery. Oh, maybe I'll point it out on another picture, but in there's a little battery. You want to take your battery out, so just click the little thing on the side of it. Might need to get a screwdriver or something. Boom, got it. Now, where did it go? There it is. Okay, so that's what your battery is going to look like. Okay, so you want to take that out. This is when your overclock fails, right? You want to take your battery out, and what that's going to do is it's going to clear the CMOS. It's going to clear the BIOS back to factory, and once you do that, you can start your overclock again. So you want to remember your settings that were good, and then you want to go from there. Add more voltage or whatever. Then you want to put that back in. Just like so. Wait a little bit, and then power on, and in theory it should start up. Hit F2 or delete to get into the BIOS, and then there we are, back to stock. Alright, so our overclock's failed for some reason. This is what you do to fix it. You go into here, you can either lower this, say our 4.4 has failed, so we want to drop this down to, let's say, 417. Alright, so we've got 417, hit enter, and now we're going to run it around 4.3. Okay, so you can do this, or you can go into your voltage and you can up your voltage. Okay, so you can, I don't know, for some reason it failed. We got at 1.4, so we go 1.42, hit enter, and then boom, it's yeah, and that's what you do. Now you go back in and then you retest it with the stress tester. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, well, you go back and you try it again. You might have to lower this, or either lower this more, or go into voltage settings and make that higher. And yeah, and that's about it really. I don't really know if there's anything else I can tell you guys. It's just really to make sure your RAM speed isn't going higher than it should. So make sure that your RAM is not going over. You can change that there. Make sure your temps are okay. Anything below like 80 I would consider safe. And yeah, there's not much more to say apart from maybe it's good to have a good airflow in your case, because as I pointed out earlier, that BCLK chip, that's not actually on the CPU, it's actually on the motherboard. So the more case cooling you have, it's going to definitely help the overclock to some extent. But yeah, hopefully this has helped. I mean, it's not the most best guide, but I mean it's got the basics of how to do it. If you got any questions or anything, just let me know. I mean, I can't really think of anything else more to tell you guys, but I mean, yeah, it should be fine. And yeah, and that's about it, guys. Good luck. I don't know, if you let me know if you want to see any more videos. Maybe I'll do some comparisons between the 6700K and the i3. Honestly, like in most games, you hardly notice a difference. I mean, you do notice some FPS drop, but generally you're over 60 in almost every game. No game is going to pretty much bottleneck out to nothing. I mean, especially if you've got a decent GPU, you might get a little bit of stuttering and bits and pieces, but in general, I haven't noticed much change at all in games I play, like Black Ops and Doom and League of Legends and things like that. Like, it's perfect. There's no reason to get anything more in my opinion, but yeah, hopefully this helps. Yeah, that's it.